Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. It is a Wednesday edition of the show, which means we are in prime time at 7 p.m. for this evening show, where we will talk about the most intriguing second-year player for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There is a slew of players from last year's draft class that Tampa Bay is relying on to have a huge season, or at least have a huge role on this team. So we're going to talk a lot about that and more. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me on tonight's show from AtoZ Sports, very happy to have on this podcast, Evan Winter. Evan, thank you so much for joining me, my man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Matt, and thanks so much for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure, and I hope everything's well on your end as well.
Yeah, things are good. I remember we first met a couple of years ago. You were at Bucs training camp, and you were watching tape of Vita Vea, and you're like, hey, you want to come over and watch this guy, see what he's going to do? And we bonded like right after that. So I always enjoy your company when you're at Bucs training camp. And of course, you're doing great things over at AtoZ. For those that might not be familiar, just let them know what you're doing over there.
Yeah, so managing editor over at AtoZ Sports.com. And I mean, we're moving through the motions whenever it comes to, trying to build a powerhouse of our own like y'all have over there. And we're moving to all NFL coverage, 23 of the 32 teams right now, all 32 in August is the plan. So a lot of big moving parts, hopefully in the future.
Yeah, very cool. So if you want to read up on another team as well, go on over to AtoZ Sports. Want to give a shout out to everybody in the chat right now, the Peter people. I already see some love for Jake Camarda. We'll talk a little bit about Jake and what we expect from him. Of course, Kate Otten as well. But Evan, you actually had a story this morning about Bucs offensive coordinator Dave Canales, what you already like about him. Can you please just give us a little synopsis of just your overall thoughts about the Bucs' new offensive coordinator?
Yeah, so first off, I mean, that picture right there, just look at that, man. I mean, like
Stop.
that is, yeah, that's an NFL coach right there. But no, I mean, obviously, the number one thing that comes to mind with Dave Canales is he's not a retread, and he's also young and he runs a modern NFL offense. So obviously, that's the number one thing that stands out to me. But it was really interesting, I thought, when he first spoke a couple weeks ago, and he mentioned how he's trying not to rush things. He wants the guys to really understand this offense, and he also wants to prove to them that it works before they really start diving in. It's not necessarily like proving himself or proving the system.
Yeah.
It's just establishing that comfort level, and also, kind of like what I like to do in a management position is, you want people to have that bond. You want to go through the motions with them and see how they process things, all that other stuff. So it's all of that. And then, it was so cool to hear Baker Mayfield specifically say that him not rushing it and how he's approached this entire install, for lack of a better word, it's been great. And Chris Godwin echoed those same sentiments. Even Godwin said it's going to be really cool to see how everything is going to come together. And I think paraphrasing here, but things are really going to hit the ground running once training camp kicks off, because things are moving a lot quicker in terms of guys picking things up. Even Baker said when the Bullets get flying, things get messy, but that didn't happen. I loved how he said they didn't have too many pre-snap penalties. I know for the Bucs, that's been more of a defensive side of the ball thing over the last few years, but still encouraging. You don't want sloppy play. So overall, man, just, him taking this methodical, scrupulous approach. And at first it seems a little counterintuitive because of, there's not a lot of time to practice these days.
Yeah.
But really, when you think about it, if you move fast, things can get lost in the shuffle in terms of guys not picking things up, minor mistakes, so on and so forth. But creating everything and setting up that big foundation right now, honestly, it's a really good idea. And I'm super excited to see how it works out.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see how quickly he's fit in. And of course, he's going to establish his offense and his scheme, so the players have to listen and react to it. But the comfortability standpoint that you just talked about, he was in Seattle in one place for over a decade and over on the West Coast. So that's a big move for him. And sure, it helps that he has wide receiver coach Brad Idzik with him as well. But communication has been an issue for the Bucs on both sides of the ball. You can go back to the divisional round playoff game against the Rams at the end of the Bucs season. That was a communication issue that got Cooper Kupp that open down the field and ended their season. And we all know what went on last year between Byron Leftwich, the offensive coordinator, Brady and Mike Evans not being on the same page. So I know fans don't love hearing patience and I don't even have all of the offense in just yet. But that's okay because the offense is going to look extremely different this season, which is very much a welcoming thing. There's going to be a lot of running the ball, which obviously goes right into our topic today with the second-year players because Rachaad White, RB1, Luke Goedeke, potentially the starting right tackle, at least on paper, he is. We can kind of go any number of ways with this, with last year's draft class going into year two. But the question for the show was which second-year player is most intriguing to you personally, Evan? Who is it? And we can kind of go off from there. But for you, who are you most paying attention to?
Yeah, it's a great question because when you really think about it, all of these guys, you can make a case as to why either
Yes.
A, they are intriguing in general, or just B,
Agreed.
most intriguing. Yeah, and I actually ranked them before I came on.
Nice.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
we can do that.
I've got Rachaad White as number one. And that's because of what Todd Bowles said yesterday. He flat out said when he was asked if he expects a big season from Rachaad, he said yes. I mean, Todd's not going to beat around the bush, and he's also not going to give too much away. And he does use coach speak a lot of times, but when he's that direct, I'm listening. So, that automatically vaulted Rachaad up to the top of the list. And, when you look at just what this Bucs rushing attack needs to look like in 2023, he is the perfect type of back for this system. He's a good north and south runner. He can also get to the outside real quickly. So one cut guy, he's going to be a lot more effective than Leonard Fournette ever would have been in this offense. And it all starts with him. Well, it all starts up front, but then it's going to end up coming with him right behind it. And yeah, I mean, he's going to have to really hone in and dig deep, but he's easily the number one most intriguing second-year player after what Todd Bowles said yesterday.
Yeah, it's hard to argue when your starting running back is in the equation for this topic to argue against him. I'm going to pick someone differently, and I'll get to him in a moment. But yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you. I mean, you heard Dave Canal say that he's a violent runner and he likes those type of running backs. I love the fact that the Bucs offense is going to have a zone blocking scheme now because that was some of the traits with Rachaad White, even just getting drafted out of Arizona State, is that he's a patient runner and he has good vision. And, he's elusive. I wouldn't say he's like the most all-world, tackle breaker by any means, but he can avoid the defender at times. But if you are running that zone type of offense, that requires the running back to have that patience, to have that proper vision. You're not just selling all out for one hole specifically to go to on any given play, which we saw the Bucs get in a lot of trouble, specifically on short yardage downs. I mean, that Pittsburgh game comes to mind. They couldn't convert any 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. Hell, they even tried the Tom Brady QB sneak, and that didn't work in that game. So I just think this new look zone blocking offense is going to be absolutely fantastic for Rachaad White. I respect everything that Leonard Fournette did for this team when he was with the Bucs. Obviously, a huge reason why they won the Super Bowl. But I'm also glad that he's not on this year's roster, the 2023 roster, because there's no reason. And, there's the whole Ezekiel Elliott conversation, and he's still available. I don't want him to end up in Tampa Bay because just let Rachaad White be the guy. I understand young players, the rookie class that's coming in, these second-year players. There are times to be apprehensive about a young guy carrying the load, a young player being a key aspect of this team. Sometimes you just got to throw them into the water, though, and, see what they can do. Sometimes you got to give them that experience. And I really think Rachaad White, don't let any other distractions. Don't worry about another veteran coming in to take some snaps. Just let him be the guy. I don't even think they scratched the surface with him. You look, he only had 1 rushing touchdown last year, Evan, and 2 receiving touchdowns. So there is still a lot more they can do with Rachaad White. And that's why the guy I'm picking, I was torn between 2 players, but sticking with the run game, I think there's a lot of questions on the right side of the offensive line. We know on the left side, Tristan Wirfs playing left tackle, Matt Filer penciled in at left guard, obviously Ryan Jensen at center. But that right side with Cody Mock, who's going to be on tomorrow's show, a little plug there, and then Luke Goedeke is my pick. Just what is he going to do starting at right tackle? I'm very curious to get your thoughts about this, Evan, because I feel we are all collectively putting way too much stock into Luke Goedeke having 1 good game at right tackle in the last game of the season. And it's the same reasons why we've written off, say, like KJ Britt and Kyle Trask for how poorly they played in those games. But all of a sudden, Luke Goedeke is getting his flowers. Do I think there are benefits to him playing on his natural side of the right side and playing where he played in college at offensive tackle? Absolutely. That's going to be way more comfortable for him. And I'm not saying that he's unable to do the job, but if he can play at a high level or just do what the Bucs ask of him, the offensive line is going to improve leaps and bounds. So that's why I think for Luke Goedeke, if he's not your right tackle, who is? And that's why I find it most intriguing, because it's a little bit of all or nothing right now with that right side of the offensive line, at least at tackle. Guard, there's great depth, but tackle, I think there's a lot more questions.
Yeah, he was number 2 on my list, and
There you go.
the biggest thing from coming from my mind is, and I'm with you 100% on the final game of the year. Like how you brought up KJ Britt and Kyle Trask, that was like perfect, because yeah, they played poorly, but all of a sudden Goedeke has one good game, and it's like, oh, we figured it out. He's the answer, But
Yeah.
but obviously the Bucs think a lot about it too, because they felt comfortable enough with using him at right tackle, or the idea of him at right tackle potentially, and obviously Tristan at left tackle, to where they didn't really make a tackle a priority in the draft. They kind of played the board, and if a tackle fell to them, then that was kind of the approach that they were going to take it. Then they weren't going to force themselves into taking a tackle. So that right there gives him all the reason to be number 2 on this list, and he was number 1 before the Bowles comment yesterday for me. Obviously they feel strongly about him because they have completely foregone, adding another. And when you also juxtapose it with the guard competition on the inside, and how, pretty much Matt Filer is probably going to win left guard unless something crazy just happens. But now you've got like 6 people stacked up for the right guard competition. Yeah. So, and you don't really have a swing tackle. So yeah, it's just like, it's obviously something that they are seeing something in him to where they are feeling very, very good about it, or it's going to turn into a horrendous mistake. It's either going to go one way or the other.
Yeah, very true. And, Brandon Walton was that swing tackle, started in the game last year when Donovan Smith got hurt. That's also because their other offensive tackle, Justin Wells, got hurt too. So it was more out of a necessity type of thing.
Well, yeah, and Harold Goodwin said a couple weeks ago that he thinks Brandon Walton's home is on the inside. He thinks he's better on the inside. So that just completely threw a wrench. It's kind of like when they said Greg Gaines, they envisioned him as nose. I was kind of like, wait, what? So, like they've got some interesting perspectives coming into the offseason. It's going to be interesting to see how they play out for sure.
With that said, I love the depth on the interior offensive line. I mean, Robert Hainsey started every single game last year up until Ryan Jensen got in the mix. And then, of course, Nick Levery got hurt. But having Hainsey as a viable option to plug in and play at any moment. Aaron Stinney comes back. Now, Stinney's a little bit limited because he can only play guard and he can't really play tackle. And I don't think he's played center either. But he was the starter for the whole playoff run. Like, there is some credibility to that. And Nick Leverett as well, just super, super versatile. So I absolutely love the depth because someone's going to win that job. Like, remember, Aaron Stinney could have won it last year, but he got hurt in the preseason in that game against the Indianapolis Colts. So he never really had a shot. Who knows what happens? Goedeke might not even start in that situation if Aaron Stinney is available, but that was last year. I do like this comment from Flash Gordon, who says, I'm not worried about Goedeke. Just like Kappa and Hainsey before him, he's reformed his body and is ready. So I think that's also important. It goes back to patience, what we were talking about with Dave Canales. Not every rookie that comes in shines right away. I've said it before, Bucs fans are spoiled because Antoine Winfield Jr. or Tristan Wirfs, I should have started with, those two guys in that draft class were incredible in their rookie year. And that just doesn't happen all the time. And I think Alex Kappa is a great example of someone that came in, was an offensive tackle, moves to the guard position, and then ended up being a very viable starter for the Bucs up until he got hurt. But then he signed that big contract with the Cincinnati Bengals. So I don't think by any means any second-year player really in general should you absolutely give up on. But I think why Rachaad White is 1 and Goedeke is 2, or vice versa, however you want to look at it, some of the other positions that you have here with these second-year players that we'll talk about, there's more room where if this player fails, they can find someone else to pick it up. But with Goedeke specifically, if it doesn't work out with him, where do you go from there? And I think the dropping point is the scariest part of it all.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and it goes back to, the original point is they must see something in him, outside of just that one game. And obviously they're with him way more than we are. So they would obviously know more, but it's interesting for sure. And you just fingers crossed that it works out because too, you can't have the offensive line you had last year because this
No.
year is really big about evaluation in terms of the big picture. Got a lot of guys on 1-year deals, especially at quarterback. And if you things are just a mess up front, you're not going to get a true evaluation of what you need to know going into next year. Sets you back, yada yada. So yeah, they've got to get this figured out for sure.
Absolutely. Get to a couple other comments here. David Arbuckle says, most intriguing, I'm just hoping Logan Hall makes the team. Wow. Obviously, Bowles doesn't have a lot of faith in Hall, or he would have played more. And then Charlie Johnson says, Kate Otten with 3 question marks. So, Evan, you made a rankings. Who do you have as your third player on this list?
So I've got Zyon McCollum, just because he is so athletic, man. And when you have a player with that athleticism playing a premium position like cornerback, now granted, you've got 2 outside corners already in Carlton and Jamel, but we know sometimes Carlton shadows, so he could play inside from time to time.
Yep.
And then Zyon could come outside. But also they need an answer. The Bucs need an answer at nickelback. And now obviously Zyon, his traits and everything relate more to an outside corner, but a guy with that much athleticism, I mean, man, why not at least give him a crack? And if it works out, then all of a sudden the Bucs secondary looks pretty damn good. Now that they've got the nickel position sewn up. Obviously, his tackling issues last year were very, very noticeable. And
yes,
when you're playing nickel, you've got to be a good run defender. You've got to be able to wrap up and play the run. So that's definitely something that would need to be taken into account. And also, you've got Josh Hayes, who was just drafted. But still, just man, with his athletic, I think he got a perfect 10 out of 10 in the RAS score, or it was like a 9.93, something like that. Either way, just when you have a player with that much athleticism, again, playing a premium position like cornerback, that just immediately piques my interest, especially whenever there's a big need like the nickelback position. And hey, let's be honest, Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean, they don't stay healthy all the time. So, having a viable number 3 in that rotation who can come in case one of them go down, that would be huge as well.
There's no question about it. It's so funny, man. We're kind of thinking similar right now because I was torn between Luke Goedeke and Zyon McCollum as my top overall pick. And you might be questioning, oh, why Zyon McCollum? He's a backup. You got it with Jamel and Carlton Davis. And, those guys are great there. But yeah, I obviously I think the biggest missing piece of this Bucs defense is figuring out that slot corner position. And Jason Light has said we view slot, nickel corner, whatever you want to call it, as a starting position. And I believe it was Jason Light, and then I think also Todd Bowles talking about some in-house candidates to compete for that role. And they mentioned D. Delaney, and I like D. Delaney. I think he's a very serviceable special teams player, but I like him as CB4. I don't know if I love him in the lineup specifically, but Zyon McCollum, with that speed that he has, you have to use that to your advantage. And the Bucs used him on special teams as a gunner for sure, but Todd Bowles loves speed above anything else. So you got a guy like that in the lineup. And I can't help but think, and it's a little bit of apples to oranges, but he got injured early on in training camp. I believe it was a hamstring injury. And I feel like he kind of got a little bit behind the 8 ball there. And the reason why I say it's apples to oranges, because in an odd way, it reminds me of when Scotty Miller got his start. Another guy that got drafted later on, and Scotty's not with the team anymore. We know he's in Atlanta. But Scotty Miller's rookie year was almost a redshirt year because he wasn't even really available to play or dressed to play until the latter half of the season. It wasn't really till year 2 that he started to come on. And I think Zyon, his rookie year also reminds me a little bit of Jamel Dean's. Most specifically, the Bucs had a game in Seattle against the Seahawks, and Jamel Dean was a spot start in that game because I forgot who it was, but someone cramped up during warmups, and it's like, all right, Jamel, you're in, and he had to go in, and he struggled, understandably so. A rookie who's finding out that he's starting half an hour before the game, and he bounced back the next game, and obviously went off to the races, and he is where he is now. Now with Zyon, he had some starting opportunities, again, out of necessity, like you were just talking about, with some of the injuries that pop up with Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean. but he did get thrown into the fire. And maybe he didn't respond to the next game right away like Jamel Dean did back in the day. But now he's got a whole nother year, another couple of months in this system, living in Tampa. He's ready now. He's healthy going into this. I'm just curious to see, not having to worry about that injury at all. And I know it was a long time ago, but just being more comfortable in this offense or defense, excuse me. But the point you bring up about the tackling is spot on. We're going to learn a lot this year about what Zyon can do as a tackler, because with everything about, oh, you're learning to play in the NFL and the experience, when it comes to tackling, it's like you either can or you can't. And he whiffed a lot in bad ways. I mean, that Carolina game, they picked on Zion McCollum. It was absolutely awful. And that game was so frustrating to Bucs fans because everyone thought the Bucs should have won that game. The Panthers just traded Christian McCaffrey. All they had was DJ Moore. And who's scoring the touchdowns? DJ Moore in that game. So Zyon, the tackling has to be improved tenfold. And even if he doesn't win that starting nickel position, that's fine. Being a backup in year 2 is still okay. But, he's got a positive attitude. He's smiling everywhere. I'm sure, again, he's an offensive player, but being from Galveston, I'm sure Mike Evans has taken him under his wing. He's just a really interesting player with that secondary, because I think it's the last piece to the puzzle. I know there's some questions about edge rusher and defensive tackle, and we'll talk about Logan Hall. But yeah, Zyon, I think, is super interesting. Let's talk about Logan Hall, though. What's your overall outlook on him going into this year? I know how I feel about him, but the floor is yours for what you think of Logan Hall.
Yeah, it's a tough sell, man. It's hard for me to see him, coming in and being the starter on day one. Now, obviously it's harder for defensive linemen to transition to the NFL. Usually it might take them a little bit of time. So in terms of Kalijah Cansey, maybe he doesn't get off to a fast start that, people are kind of assuming that he will, and no pun intended there. I just realized that as I was saying, but yeah, but just Logan and his tape at points last season was just so bad. Couldn't get his pad level down. Obviously his play strength wasn't there, and that's been a big talking point this offseason about how he's really getting stronger and stuff, which is great, but we need to see him use that on the field. You can play like Tarzan or look like Tarzan, play like Jane, as we all know. So and with Cansey now in the mix, obviously they're going to need depth, but man, I am intrigued to see what Logan does. He's definitely further down on my list. And that's just mostly because, you didn't see the flashes last year. I mean, maybe you saw 2 or 3, but that was
they were
really
early in the season, like the Packers game.
Right, exactly. So, like you just didn't see him pop, on a consistent basis. And I'm not talking about like every single game. I'm just talking about, just every couple weeks, something like that. You just didn't see that consistent flash that, you like to see out of rookies that are finding their way. So, there's a lot of questions. Don't know really how he's going to handle everything coming into the season. I mean, I'm sure mentally he'll be fine, but I'm talking about just starting role, all that other stuff. So, definitely interested to see what he does, but yeah, he's definitely he was the penultimate player on my list.
Interesting. Ehi Note says, I'm glad you're here to talk about Logan. All of that is right on. So giving a nice compliment to Evan. Yeah, so I asked Casey Rogers, the defensive line coach, a couple of weeks ago, just his overall outlook on Logan, like where he needs to improve. And he essentially said, part of it is my fault. We just didn't play him enough, just based on,
Right.
where the team was. They are obviously in win now mode and we're looking to win the division. And you had Will Golston in there. And, obviously I believe what Casey Rogers says, but I agree with it too. There were times I just felt Logan Hall didn't get enough snaps, especially like later in the season. You look at his snap count. And yes, some of the overall production just wasn't there. I think his best game was that Packers game, really, when he got in Aaron Rodgers' face a couple of times. But I am curious to see if he just gets more reps out there. And he's one of the guys, it's him and Luke Goedeke that have put on some weight this year. Like we were looking at it the other day at practice on Tuesday. Logan Hall looks big. You can see the thickness with a couple of C's on Logan Hall. So I think it's really cool to see this year. Don't get me wrong, Will Golston, all-time Buck in terms of just like fans love him.
Mm-hmm.
Late to the game, or at least like later round pick, was on all the bad teams with the Bucs, and ends up winning a Super Bowl. Great with the media as well. But I just want to see Logan Hall focused on playing that kind of like defensive end role that Will Golston had. And if Will Golston comes back, I think it's got to be as you got to understand Logan's going to be the top defensive tackle, obviously after like Vita Vea and Greg Gaines and everything like that. But Will's in just to give a couple of guys a break if they end up re-signing him. I think Logan, there's still a lot of potential there. And I think with more weight, and as you said, defensive tackle is the toughest position, one of them, to transition into the NFL. I mean, Will Golston, we had him on the podcast last year, and he said he's like a more athletic JJ Watt. That's what he was saying about Logan Hall.
Oh,
and that
God.
is the highest of the highest praise that you can really get. So I think Logan, just more experience than anything else. And then, of course, having Kalijah Cansey now, I'm curious to see how they'll implement the Bucs defensive front, because Todd Bowles loves to move people around. I also do feel for Logan specifically, it might just be better if he's just at that one spot, that defensive end Will Golston role. But I think it's really important. But that kind of goes back to what I was saying, where if Logan Hall doesn't pan out this year, or he struggles like he did last year, you have other guys in the room. You got Vita Vea, who's going to take the brunt of it. Greg Gaines, Kalijah Cansey. That's why he was a first-round pick. I think you got to remember, too, this roster's always changing. Like, no one saw them trading for Steve McClendon halfway through the year a couple seasons ago. And then Steve McClendon ended up being like a solid role player. So
great, man. Yeah.
I'm still optimistic about Logan Hall, but I do agree there are things. It's a little bit more of a wait and see with Logan Hall than it is with any of the other guys that we've kind of talked about.
Yeah, if I'm looking at, the draft class from last year, that's exactly what it is. It's not apathy, but it's just kind of like, okay, man, I need to see something before I start, getting the ball rolling on this. But, whereas you have, even with Zyon McCollum, just what he is as a player, puts him at that other level. And, he didn't flash really a lot last year. He had, like we were talking about, the missed tackles and all that stuff, but still, yeah, with Logan, I don't know, it's just a weird vibe right now. And that's obviously subjective on my part. Totally enthusiastic and still optimistic he can make it work. But yeah, it's definitely wait and see on my end with him.
One thing I'm always enthusiastic about, of course, is Celsius Energy Drinks, the official sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast and pewterreport.com. They got a variety of flavors. Make sure you make it your number one pick. You see the Oasis Vibe, sparkling lemon lime, sparkling orange as well. I love the Arctic Vibe. I'm a huge fan. Cucumber lime is great too. So if you need to go pick up a Celsius, don't know where to find one, go to the store locator on the Celsius website, punch in your address, and it will tell you the closest location where you can pick one up at your local Walmart, Target, convenience store, 7-Eleven, or your bodega, as I like to say. So go to Celsius store locator, find out where you can get one near you, and just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. Evan, you've been very gracious with your time. I know you got to pop out soon, but one more guy I feel like we should talk about, because he probably got the most playing time out of all of the guys going into their second year. That's tight end Cade Otton.
Yep.
A veteran in the tight end room now with himself and Co Keefe as second year players. Obviously, Payne Durham out of Purdue, they drafted this year. For Cade Otton, I think he's going to be tight end one, but I think this tight end group is going to be productive, but it's going to be a tight end by committee, with Cade leading the way. Probably if I was going to bet, I'd say Cade would lead the tight ends in receiving yards. But how do you see it for him?
Yeah, that's easily the one guy we definitely had to mention before, everything concluded. But yeah, I love the trajectory he's on. Talk about somebody who really took advantage of their moments last year. That was Cade Otton. And, him being a 4th round pick makes it all the more impressive. And that's what gives you confidence that Payne Durham maybe won't have the same impact, but will at least be able to come in and provide significant quality snaps. Is that, tight ends are one of those positions too, where it takes them a long time to develop, or not a long time, but a couple years to develop, kind of like defensive line. But, Cade looks pretty seamless right now. And yeah, with Dave Canales and how he likes to use tight ends, how the Seahawks have liked to use tight ends over last year. I mean, if you go back with Noah Fant, Will Dissly, and the other cat I can't think of right off the top of my head last year, But yeah, you look at how they use them, and it's definitely going to be a tight end by committee. I would be surprised if, I would be surprised if O'Keefe and Kate Otten and whoever the third tight end, let's just say Durham, I would be surprised if the snap share is anything different than like 40, 30, 25 or something like that. I think they're all going to be playing a lot of snaps, a lot of different roles. And Canales' offense, the different plays out of the same looks, or whatever, maybe it's the other way around. No, yes, that's what it was. Sorry, I get confused sometimes. But running that also allows these guys to move around the formation, all that other stuff. And you can use them in all kinds of different ways. And that's the cool thing too is, obviously O'Keefe is more of a blocker, but with Durham and Otten, they're the traditional Y tight ends. They can block and they can catch. So you're not pigeonholing, or you're not really tipping off the defense whenever they're on the field. Like when you had Cam Brate on the field, you knew most of the time it was a pass because his run blocking wasn't that great. But like, they're not going to pigeonhole themselves, and that's going to really allow them to, get these guys going.
Yeah, it'll be cool to see some 2 tight ends and 3 tight end sets. I think the red zone is going to be where these guys can really thrive, especially Payne Durham, but Kate Otten as well. He was always Mr. Second Half. I want to see him get more involved earlier in the game. But Evan, great insight, man. Thank you so much for your time. I know you got to hop off here. So just real quick, where can everyone find you on your social media, and just tell them again about AtoZ Sports?
Yeah, so AtoZSports.com, check us out. Like I said, 23 of 32 teams right now. The Buccaneers are definitely one. They were one of our originals, so they're the blue blood of the website. And then we're going to push to all 32 in August, so we'll be able to fit one size fits all by that point. But you don't want to go to the website, you can check me out on Twitter at Evan_A to Z.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Evan Winter, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you joining the show today. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow we have a very special guest. Bucs starting right guard Cody Mauch, I should say, is going to be joining the show. Going to be an awesome time. He's been super exciting already, just from the couple of interviews that we've already had with him virtually when he first got drafted, and then of course in person right before rookie OTAs, or rookie minicamp, I should say. So very excited to have Cody Mauch on the show tomorrow. Going to be a lot of fun. Myself and JC Allen as well. But I'm going to stick on for a little bit more too. A couple guys that we still have to talk about. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask away. We'll do a little Q&A right now. Al Bundy says, I think Co will be a tight end 3. I agree. I think it's going to be Kate Otten 1, Payne Durham 2, O'Keefe at 3. And then they got a couple of other guys that have been in practice. Tala, the tight end, though, made the big catch from Kyle Trask the other day. And yeah, O'Keefe can kind of do a little bit of everything, as Matthew Sam's is saying. Co is that tight end, fullback type of back. Let's remember, he scored a touchdown last season in the game against the Browns, and I'm pretty sure he lined up as a tight end, or sorry, as a fullback on that play. So yeah, you'll see him move around more, where Kate Otten and Payne Durham will be in their traditional tight end role. So we talked about a lot of guys already: Logan Hall, Luke Goedeke, Kate Otten, Rachaad White. Mentioned O'Keefe a little bit. I think we know O'Keefe's role, to be honest with everybody. Like, he's going to be that fullback, as Nathan says. There will be a battle for tight end 2. You know what? I don't think the tight end 1 job is just going specifically to Kate Otten. I think he's going to win it. I think he's going to grasp this offense pretty well. I mean, he's just a guy that already has a high football IQ. But don't get me wrong, Payne Durham will absolutely compete for tight end 1. I don't think he's going to get it, at least right away. But yeah, I think that's Kate Otten's job to lose. And then O'Keefe, just going to be a bruiser, cracking skulls on blocks. He's going to be important in the run game as well. I'm excited to see like how and where he's going to line up, because he could be a little bit of everywhere. But of course, the other second-year player that we got to talk about, who had one of the more exciting plays of the season. Not going to say the most exciting play, because Rachaad White scored a game-winning touchdown. Kate Otten scored a game-winning touchdown and then set up the comeback for Rachaad White's game-winning touchdown with his own TD as well. But I'd be remiss if we did not talk about this man, Jake Camarda. Obviously, the infamous play he had was late in the season, a home game where there was a botched snap. He had to go get it, roll out, and get the punt off before he, got sacked, before he lost the ball, before the opponent was able to, pick it up and go. But Jake Camarda, I think he's in for another solid year. I don't have all the punting stats in front of me at the moment, so forgive me. But, he was a solid guy. I think he came on pretty well. I'm curious to see if he's going to do the kickoffs this year, because that was the big thing when they had Ryan Suckup as the kicker, is that Jake Camarda was going to run the kickoffs as well. But this year he doesn't necessarily have to, with the Bucs having their own kicker battle. We'll see what the decision is there from Todd Bowles and Keith Armstrong. But he's obviously very athletic. He's got an absolute boot on him. I think he did a solid job last year overall of just pinning teams deep. I'd like to see him improve on that this year, because I think in the past, the Bucs punt coverage hasn't always been ideal. They've allowed some pretty big returns in recent seasons. So I'd like to see a couple more fair catches, those pins inside the inside the 20 and maybe even the 10. But Jake Camarda was definitely a very, very serviceable first year punter in the league. Wayne Hankinson says special teams should improve with the increased team speed. Yeah, that's a great point there. I love this comment by Richard Taroka, the Legonier. Little pun on the Buccaneers. But yeah, back to Wayne's point. Absolutely true, 100%. If you're talking about just the overall speed, I mean, they want to get faster. I know specifically they were talking about offense and defense, but it's going to help out with special teams too. I mean, we talk about Devin Tompkins as well. He's a second-year player. He wasn't drafted, but he's without question a second-year player. But will he be the return guy? Of course, Trey Palmer is in the mix as well. And if you have Zyon McCollum as one of the gunners, as you see Trey Palmer there with not special teams coach, wide receivers coach Brad Idzik in the photo, Trey Palmer could end up being a gunner as well. Or if Trey Palmer wins the starting kick returner job, Devin Tompkins could become a gunner. So you're just adding speed to that team, which is super important. Cade Warner is another player that's trying to make this team. Josh Hayes is going to play a lot of special teams. They're working on special teams in this photo. This is Servassier Dennis and Cade Warner. I'm not by any means saying that Cade is making this team, but I think you're going to see a vast improvement with the Bucs special teams coverage this year. Overall, as a return team, they weren't too bad. I know it didn't look great at times, but once they made the move for Devin Tompkins as the full-time kick returner, the Bucs improved in a great way. But in terms of kick return yards allowed, and I know the NFL just changed the rule, so it's going to look very different this time around. But kick return yards and punt return yards allowed, the Bucs were towards the bottom of the league. Not last, not even, bottom 5, but, between 20 and 32, they were in that range, which isn't always great. Matthew Sams talking about Jake Camarda said he had a great year. Some people didn't like drafting a kicker, but he was excellent. I have no problem with where they drafted him. They drafted him in like the 5th or 6th round, if I'm not mistaken. That's that's all right. It's when you pick a guy much, much earlier is when it really is the issue. Just because you make one bad draft pick doesn't mean that you should just never draft that position again. Just you learn from your mistake. Don't draft a kicker that early, or at least a field goal kicker. Again, punter's a little bit of a different story. Tim Allen says, LFG. Tim, thank you for watching the show. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate all the Pewter people that are watching this show. Nathan Elliott says, Cade Warner will make the team and be challenging for wide receiver 4 or wide receiver 5. He will be light years better than Jalen Fall Down Darden. Well, if he wants to create contact, he'll be better than Jalen Darden, because Darden just ran out of bounds every single time. And I don't really want to knock a guy while he's not on the team anymore. But the wide receiver group in general, how it's going to work out is quite interesting. We know the main guys, obviously. You got Mike Evans. You have Chris Godwin. It was great hearing from Chris Godwin yesterday, talking about his new role, just the offense, everything else. And then Russell Gage as your wide receiver 3. But after that, I think it's fairly open competition for who's going to win that job. I mean, Tevin Tompkins is in the mix. Trey Palmer, they obviously drafted. Who was it? Raheem Jarrett, the wide receiver, undrafted free agent out of Maryland, I believe. He's in the mix. And of course, Cade Warner. So going to be open competition. It's just more of, will the Bucs take 4? Will they take 5? Will they take 6? Very interested to see what they are going to do. Misador says, sorry, let me change graphics here. Let's go back to Trey Palmer. We like Trey Palmer, right? We'll do a different Cade Warner. There we go. Misador says, could be worse. They could have drafted a QB in the second round and then dress him once in 2 years. Yeah, Misador feeling a little salty about the move for Kyle Trask. You know what? Well, since we're talking about wide receivers, I liked what Chris got. We didn't play this video on yesterday's Pewter Report podcast, so this is technically new content, even though it came out yesterday. Chris Godwin spoke about the quarterback competition. You know, obviously he's worked with a couple quarterbacks in his career, mostly Jameis Winston, a little bit of Ryan Fitzpatrick, and then Tom Brady the past couple of seasons. But this is a new experience for everybody, really, but specifically with Chris Godwin. He talked about working with Baker, Kyle Trask, what he thinks of the overall competition, how it's going to play out. And I thought he had a good answer. So we're going to play it.
I mean, honestly, it's just different. You know, anytime you have a new quarterback, it's different. And obviously we don't know who that guy's going to be yet, but it doesn't feel weird. It just, it just feels like you're just getting reps with a bunch of guys. So, I get to work on my own skill development, get to work with the receivers. And then it's like, for us, we got to handle our business regardless of who's throwing the ball. So we kind of like discuss those things as you go out, and it's like, let's make the play. When the ball comes our way, let's make the play. And I think Kyle and Baker have both done a great job so far of just, it's like a friendly competition. Like, there's no like animosity. Like, you see them helping each other. They talk through a bunch of things. So I think we have a really good environment on our team right now. And, I think we're all really just trying to pull the rope in the same direction.
Yeah, good stuff from Chris Godwin there. Matthew says Tompkins. I believe he thinks Tompkins is either going to win the kick return job or at least make this roster as a wide receiver. As J Ray 12 says, our wide receiver room is really talented. Obviously talented with the top 2. Russell Gage, a big question mark this year. You're seeing a lot more speed, though. Bucs had height last year when you added Julio Jones to the mix, but they weren't fast. Now they got a lot of small guys. Trey Palmer's 6'1". Warner's not that tall, but like Warner's got speed. Trey Palmer obviously has speed. He's got a 4.3 40-yard dash. Raheem Jarrett brings something to the mix. So you're going to see a lot more quickness to this Bucs offense, which I think is super important because we have to remember this offense with Dave Canales, it's not no risk it, no biscuit anymore. It's going to be a lot of short to intermediate routes that's going to give guys opportunities to make bigger plays by either breaking tackles or catching the ball in stride. We talked a lot about the different mesh routes that are going to happen this year with the offense. So there's a lot of exciting things to come with these speedy wide receivers. You're going to have the height with Mike and Chris. You don't need everyone to be 6'5". You don't want to be crazy small either. But I think the Bucs have a very nice balance there. Richard with a question, can wide receiver Trey Palmer be the next Antonio Brown minus the head case issues? Antonio Brown is just an excellent route runner, and he had this smooth elusiveness to him, which I don't think Trey Palmer has just yet. He has the speed, clearly, and has already shown that he can, take the top off of a defense. So I do see a couple of similarities. I wouldn't say his overall comparison is to Antonio Brown. I don't think he's going to be the next Antonio Brown, but I think he can be way more of a threat than Scotty Miller was in this offense. And ironic because they're weighing the same number 10. Matthew says, I'm excited to see Trey Palmer. Wayne Hackinson says, I will wait to see the wide receivers once the pads come on. I agree with that too, because I'll admit I was pretty excited about Jalen Darden, and then the pads came on and he never built up to the expectations. So I would agree with that. And Kelly asking, what do you think about David Moore, the wide receiver? So yeah, he's here on an invite. He was actually taking some punt returns as well. I don't think he's going to win that job. Veteran player, was in Seattle for a while, knows this offense. I don't really see him making the team. I could see him being as a practice squad guy and overall helping out with the offense. I think there is importance and value to that aspect of it. So I don't mind. The Bucs have went the route with veteran signings before, and it doesn't always pan out. But I think David Moore, that one is certainly a little bit more intriguing than some other ones in the past. Speaking of intrigue, I'm a big gambling guy. So I'm always intrigued to all the sports that are going on so I can bet on them. And of course, if you're going to be betting, make sure you go and do it over at mybookie.ag. We've all been there before. A weekend trip to the casino canceled because real life came calling. Well, MyBookie's new and improved online casino is here to change the game. Dive into a truly realistic casino experience featuring the latest in slots, progressive jackpots, and live dealer action, all from the comfort of your own home. Take advantage of weekly blackjack tournaments and a brand new collection of high-end games for a chance at real cash rewards. The MyBookie Casino provides a Las Vegas experience when the action's in your hands, and the best part is you don't even need to wear pants. Your adventure at the MyBookie Casino begins today with a generous sign-up bonus using promo code PEWTER. That's promo code PEWTER, PEWTER, to secure yourself a sweet deposit bonus. And that's not all, because their revamped loyalty program ensures that you'll be showered with rewards. That includes free spins, cashback offers, and a host of exclusive VIP perks. The more you play, the more you win. Play anytime, anywhere with the MyBookie Casino. Once again, that promo code is PEWTER, PEWTER, and you can also use it to get a first deposit bonus up to $1,000. So play for free. Why not? Absolutely. MyBookie.ag. I know the NBA playoffs, the Celtics won last night. So it's 3-1. You might want to take a prop bet on the Celtics to come back and win that series, maybe. The Panthers are up 3-0 against the Carolina Hurricanes. That one's probably over, but I think they play tonight. You can bet on them. And, of course, you have Vegas and the Dallas Stars as well. I believe Vegas is up 3-0, so that series is done. But you can, of course, bet on the Stanley Cup Finals and the NBA Finals when those come around. Of course, baseball is going on at the moment. Rays are really good. Mets are playing a lot better. So bet on those teams as well over at mybookie.ag. Brandon, I saw you asked this question the other day, and we'll get to it now. Brandon Riley says, will you guys be going to Indianapolis to cover that game? I just got ticks on the 50-yard line. That is awesome, Brandon. We're still figuring out the travel schedule and everything for Pewter Report in terms of road games. We usually try to get a Pewter reporter or two out there for the road games, but we don't have anything set in stone. However, if you're out there and we send someone, we'll let you know. And I think you said something in another one. You want to say hello, whatever. More than happy to say hi if we have one of us out there. But yeah, we'll keep you guys updated about those games. We usually have someone at least at every road game, but we will finalize that. Matthew says Heat going to the finals. Yeah, probably. I'm curious as well to get your guys' opinions. I'm a big gambler. I like to responsibly, of course. I like to do some stuff with betting the Bucs. I've written about it in the past. I like to tweet out my picks before the game as well, whether it's, the over under, whether the Bucs are a favorite or not. I like to do some prop bets as well. My best bet that I hit for the Bucs last year, it was that Bucs Carolina game. If you recall, the game before, the Bucs were not. It was when they lost to the Steelers, and they just were not throwing it to Mike Evans. He didn't get a lot of targets in the second half. So I said hammer the over on receiving yards for Mike Evans and the number of catches he had, and those hit pretty well. They completely surpassed the over-under number on both of those accounts. So I'm thinking about possibly doing a YouTube segment when the season gets here, just Bucs picks and maybe some NFL picks as well. If you guys would be interested in that, let me know. Feel free to comment on this As Tom says, he's a craps guy. I like the game of craps, but it's like way too confusing for me that I would need someone else in there that knows it well to play it often. But yeah, if you want to see some gambling content with myself, whether it's on YouTube or whatever, feel free to comment here, comment on the video below after the show. Please hit the like button, as Tom said, or feel free to DM me on Twitter. I'm at Matty4_Matera. That's Matera. Like I said, we have a very fun show tomorrow. Bucs rookie right guard Cody Mauch is going to be joining us on tomorrow's show at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So set your channel, set your notifications to that. Going to be awesome talking to Cody Mauch. Going to be a very fun time chatting with him. Also want to remind everybody, of course, we love our Celsius energy drinks. If you want to get a variety pack of them, because variety is the spice of life, and just get Celsius in bulk overall, head on over to Amazon, do the subscribe and save, and you can have Celsius Energy sent to your house, apartment every week, month, quarterly, yearly, whenever you want. As long as you are drinking a Celsius Energy drink, more than happy with that. Celsius Energy, the official sponsor of PewterReport.com and the Pewter Report podcast. Tom says, Matt, craps isn't that hard. You put money in any way of goodbye. That's a good one. Brandon reminding everybody, follow. Yes, please do. And Richard says, Strahan made a career with his gap teeth. Mauch can do the same. Yes, please. We want to make this as interactive as possible when Cody is on the show. So when he's on, if you have any questions, feel free to put in the comments. We'll get to a couple of them. Of course, if you super chat us, we will definitely make sure that we get to your question. But very excited to have Cody on the show for tomorrow. And please remember to like and subscribe to Pewter Report. Follow us on our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Pewter Report. Our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. We got some great content out. A couple of Baker Mayfield stuff. I had a Chris Godwin video earlier today. We'll have much, much more coming up very, very soon. So that's going to do it for us on tonight's show. Want to thank Evan Winter again for joining the show. So for Evan Winter, who was on earlier, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching, and we will see you tomorrow for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast at 7 p.m. Cody Mauch, get ready. Very excited. Peace out.